My dad didn't forget my wedding. He chose not to come. I stood at the end of that aisle in a white dress, holding flowers so tightly the stems bruised my palms, staring at the empty chair with his name on it. Years later, when my hotel chain hit a $580 million valuation and my face was all over the news, he finally texted me. Not, "I'm proud of you." Not, "I'm sorry." Just family dinner at 7 p. This important discussion. So I went, but I didn't bring forgiveness. I brought the one thing that made my father stop calling me his daughter that night. People used to look at the Brooks family and see everything they thought money could fix. A big house in Seattle with polished floors, tall windows, and fresh white roses in the entryway every Monday morning. My mother, Linda, kept the dining table set even when no one was coming over. My brother Jason had trophies lined across the den, each one dusted like it belonged in a museum. And my father, Robert Brooks, walked through that house in tailored suits, smelling like cedar cologne and cold coffee, always on his phone, always too busy to look anyone in the eye for long, especially me. I was the daughter who learned to clap from the corner. Jason got the hand on the shoulder. Jason got invited to business lunches. Jason got introduced with pride. My son, Dad would say, like those two words carried weight. When he introduced me, if he introduced me at all, his voice changed, and this is Amanda. Like I was an extra chair at the table. I tried not to let it show. At 12, I waited in a school hallway after a winter choir concert, still wearing a red velvet dress my mother bought from a department store sale. Other girls ran into their father's arms. Mine never came. When I asked him later why he missed it, he did not even close his laptop. "I'm building a future for this family," he said. "You should understand that." So I learned to understand things no child should have to understand. I understood why Mom whispered, "He's under pressure," whenever I cried. I understood why Jason's games mattered more than my awards. I understood why every family photo had me near the edge, smiling carefully, like I was afraid to take up too much space. Still, part of me kept hoping. That is the embarrassing truth. I was beautiful, smart, capable, and by the time I met Ryan, I had already started building a life far away from my father's shadow. But the little girl in me still wanted one impossible thing. I wanted Dad to choose me once. Ryan saw it before I admitted it. On our wedding morning, he sent a note to my bridal suite, just 4 words, "I am already there." I pressed that paper to my chest and cried before my makeup artist could stop me. The room smelled like hairspray, perfume, and white lilies. My dress fit perfectly. My hair fell in soft waves. Everyone kept telling me I looked stunning, but I kept checking my phone. 10 minutes before the ceremony, it buzzed. Dad. For one stupid second. I smiled. Then I read his message. He had a meeting. He could not make it. No apology, no love. Just a sentence that turned the happiest room of my life silent. After the wedding, something inside me went quiet. Not peaceful, not healed. Just quiet in the way a room goes quiet after glass breaks and everyone pretends they did not hear it. For the first few months, I told myself I was done with Robert Brooks. I stopped calling him Dad in my head. I stopped waiting for holidays to feel different. I stopped asking Mom if he had mentioned me. But pain is strange. It does not leave just because you tell it to. So I worked. I bought my first lodge outside Portland with borrowed money, shaking hands, and a smile I barely believed in. The place smelled like wet carpet and old wood. The wallpaper peeled near the windows. The heating system made a grinding sound every time it kicked on. The bank manager looked at me over his glasses like I was a pretty girl making an expensive mistake. "Hospitality is tougher than it looks," he said. I know. I told him. I did not know. I learned at 2 in the morning, plunging toilets in heels because a guest was screaming in room 6. I learned during a winter storm when the power died, and I walked guests through black hallways with a flashlight while my fingers went numb. I learned behind the front desk, wrapped in a scratchy blanket, sleeping 3 hours before getting up to fold towels that smelled faintly of bleach. Once, I cried in the boiler room with my back against a concrete wall. Then I wiped my face and went back upstairs. That lodge became my first success. Then came another, then another. Small retreats, quiet spaces, warm wood, clean sheets, herbal tea in the lobby, places where people could breathe. Guests wrote reviews that made me cry in a different way. Investors called, magazines called, business networks called. Robert did not. Not when my first property sold out for 6 straight months. Not when I expanded. Not when a national magazine put my face on the cover beside the words, "The New Face of Luxury Retreats." Nothing. Then, one morning, years after my wedding, I walked into my office and everyone was smiling too hard. My assistant had tears in her eyes. Sarah Mitchell, my CFO, stood near the conference room with her arms crossed, trying not to grin. On the wall-mounted TV, a business anchor was saying my name. My hotel chain had hit a $580 million valuation. For a second, I could not move. My phone exploded with messages. Ryan sent a row of heart emojis. Investors sent congratulations. Employees were hugging in the hallway. Then one name appeared on my screen. Robert Brooks. My throat tightened before I even opened it. Family dinner at 7 p.m. Important discussion. No congratulations. No apology. No, Amanda, just a command. I stared at it until Sarah stepped beside me and read over my shoulder. Her smile disappeared. "That's not a dinner invitation," she said. I looked at her. She lowered her voice. "Before you go, there's something about your father's business you need to see." Sarah did not show me everything in the hallway. She shut my office door, lowered the blinds, and laid a thin stack of papers on my desk like she was placing evidence in front of a jury. At first, I saw only fragments: late payments, unpaid bills, default notices, contractor claims, properties tied to my father's name, all bleeding money under the surface while he kept smiling in country clubs and pretending the Brooks name still meant power. "How long?" I asked. Sarah's mouth tightened, long enough that this isn't a rough patch. The room felt suddenly smaller. Outside the glass wall, my team was still celebrating. Someone laughed near the elevators. A champagne cork popped somewhere down the hall. Inside my office, I was staring at the reason my father had remembered he had a daughter. "He doesn't want dinner," I said. "No," Sarah said softly. "He wants a rescue package." I almost laughed. It came out as air. For years, I had imagined Robert Brooks calling because he finally understood what he had done. I imagined regret catching up to him in some quiet room. I imagined him saying my name like it mattered. Instead, he had run out of money. Sarah explained it carefully. Some lenders wanted out. A few major assets were already in default. The debt could be purchased through the right channels, but only if we moved quickly and cleanly. No shortcuts, no tricks. Lawyers, signatures, disclosures, review. "This is not revenge," she said. "It's leverage." I looked down at the papers. Then I saw a contractor's claim for an amount small enough that my father could have paid it with one dinner party, and my stomach turned. These were real people, crews, families, workers who had fixed his broken hotels and waited for money that never came. "If we do this," I said, "they get paid first." Sarah blinked. "The small vendors, the staff, anyone he left hanging. I'm not punishing them because he failed." For the first time that morning, Sarah smiled. "That sounds like you." Ryan came by after lunch. He found me in the kitchen at home, barefoot on the cold tile, reading loan documents beside a mug of coffee I had forgotten to drink. "You don't have to go," he said. "I know. You don't have to prove anything to him." "I know that too." But my voice cracked anyway. Ryan stepped closer. And I hated that he could see the little girl still buried under the tailored blazer and the headlines. The one who wanted her father to choose her. The one who still wondered if maybe, somehow, dinner could begin with an apology. "I'm scared I'll care when I see him," I whispered. Ryan touched my hand. "Caring isn't the weakness. Letting him use it against you is." By evening, the legal team confirmed what Sarah had already suspected. The main creditor position could be transferred. The paperwork would not give me every building overnight, but it gave me the one thing Robert had never expected me to have: control. The next morning, before the 7 p.m. dinner, I placed the folder into my bag. I did not feel powerful. I felt awake. For the first time in my life, I was not walking toward my father hoping he would open his arms. I was walking in with the truth he had buried. The country club smelled like butter, wine, and old money. I arrived at 6:58, not early, not late, exactly when I meant to. The private dining room was tucked behind 2 heavy wooden doors, the kind that made every conversation feel important before anyone even spoke. When I pushed them open, 4 faces turned toward me. My father sat at the head of the table. Of course he did. Robert Brooks wore a navy suit, his silver hair combed back, one hand resting beside a glass of red wine like he was posing for a magazine profile that no one had asked to read. My mother sat to his right, twisting her wedding ring. Jason leaned back with that lazy confidence men get when life has never made them earn the room they occupy. Uncle Thomas sat beside him, quiet, watching. Amanda. Dad said, "No smile, no congratulations, no warmth. You're cutting it close." I took off my coat slowly. "It's 7. Jason gave a short laugh. "Always dramatic." I looked at him, then at my father. "You said this was important." Dad gestured to the empty chair. "Sit down." I did not. For a second, no one moved. The waiter stepped in with a bread basket, sensed the temperature in the room, and backed out without a word. Dad's jaw tightened. "We're not doing this standing. We're not doing what?" Mom's eyes flicked up. "Honey, please. Your father's had a very hard week." There it was, the same sentence in a different dress. Pressure, stress, responsibility, words that had covered every wound he ever gave me. Dad cleared his throat. "Your business has done well." My fingers tightened around the strap of my bag. Done well. That was what he called a $580 million valuation. Not extraordinary, not earned, not proud, just useful. "There are some temporary issues with a few of my properties," he continued. "Cash flow, lenders, timing, nothing that can't be corrected with the right support." Jason leaned forward. "What Dad means is, you have the resources to help." I almost smiled. "Help. You're part of this family," Jason said. "You don't get to build an empire and then act like the Brooks name had nothing to do with it. That one landed, not because it hurt, because it was so perfectly him." "The Brooks name," I said. The same name Dad didn't think was worth showing up for at my wedding silence. Mom shut her eyes. Dad's face hardened. "This is not the time to dig up personal disappointments." Personal disappointments. I felt something inside me go still. Not numb, not broken, still. "You missed my wedding," I said. "Not a lunch, not a meeting. My wedding." Dad picked up his wine glass and set it down without drinking. I had obligations. I nodded once. "So did you that day." His eyes sharpened. "Amanda." "No. Say it clearly." My voice was calm, but every word cut on the way out. "You didn't come because I wasn't important enough," Mom whispered. "That's not fair." I turned to her. "No, Mom. What wasn't fair was making me spend my whole childhood excusing a grown man who never chose me." Jason pushed his chair back. "Are we here for therapy or are we here to solve a real problem?" I looked at him. "That depends." "On what?" "On whether this dinner is about family." I reached into my bag. "Or money." Dad's eyes dropped to the folder in my hand. For the first time all night, he looked uncertain. I placed it on the table. The sound was small, paper against linen, but everyone heard it. Jason grabbed it first, annoyed, flipping it open like he expected to find some emotional little speech printed inside. His expression changed by the second page, then the third. Then he stopped breathing normally. "Dad," he said. Robert snapped. What Jason looked at him, pale now. "She has the creditor documents." Mom's hand flew to her mouth. Uncle Thomas leaned forward. Dad stood so fast his chair scraped the floor. "Where did you get those through lawyers?" I said. "Through lenders. Through every legal channel you hoped I was too naive to understand." His face darkened. You had no right. I had every right. Your loans were in default. Your payments were late. Your bills were sitting unpaid while you poured wine in places like this and waited for me to rescue you. Jason shook his head. You bought Dad's debt? I looked straight at Robert. I showed up with the papers that made me his largest creditor. The room went dead quiet. Not uncomfortable quiet. Funeral quiet. Dad stared at me like I had become a stranger in front of him. Maybe I had. Maybe the daughter he remembered was the one who would have cried. Apologized. Begged to be included. That woman never walked into the room. You planned this, he said. No, I said. You planned to use me, I prepared. Mom started crying. Amanda, please, don't destroy your father. I softened my voice. But not my spine. I'm not destroying him. He did this himself. Dad slammed his palm on the table. The glasses jumped. You think money makes you powerful? No, I said. Boundaries do. Jason pointed at the folder. So what? You're taking everything. I'm taking control of the assets already in default. The staff will be reviewed fairly. Small vendors get paid before anyone in this family touches another dollar. Contractors who waited on bills will be handled properly. You, Dad, step away from operations. Robert laughed once. Sharp and ugly. You don't have the stomach for this. I stepped closer. He stopped laughing. You're right, I said. I don't have the stomach for cruelty. That's why I won't punish the people you left unpaid. I won't leak your failures to the press. I won't drag Mom through public humiliation. And I won't let Jason sit in an executive chair just because you handed him one. Jason's mouth opened. Nothing came out. You have 60 days to cooperate with the transition, I said. After that, my legal team moves without your consent. Dad's voice dropped low. If you do this, you are no daughter of mine. There it was, the sentence I used to fear, the sentence that would have broken me years ago. I picked up my coat. No, I said quietly. You made that decision when you left a chair empty at my wedding and called it an obligation. Then I turned toward the door. Behind me! My mother sobbed. Jason cursed under his breath. Thomas said my father's name like a warning, but Robert said nothing. And that silence, for once, belonged to me. The next morning, I expected to feel guilty. That was the part no one warns you about. When you finally stand up to someone who trained you to shrink, your body still wakes up looking for punishment. I stood in my kitchen with bare feet on cold tile, watching the coffee drip into the pot, waiting for my chest to tighten. It did not. My phone was full of messages. 3 from Mom, 1 from Uncle Thomas, 9 from Jason. Each one angrier than the last. Nothing from Robert. That silence would have ruined me once. I would have stared at it for hours, trying to turn the absence into meaning. This time, I set the phone face down and poured my coffee. Sarah called at 8. The creditor transfer is confirmed, she said. The transition process starts today. I closed my eyes, not because I was celebrating, because something in me had finally stopped running. The next few months were not glamorous. They were not some movie montage where the villain disappeared and the heroine walked through sunlight in a perfect coat. They were meetings, audits, late nights, uncomfortable calls, and long tables covered in payments, bills, staffing reports, and property files. Robert fought at first. Of course he did. He argued through attorneys. He claimed I had manipulated lenders. He said I was emotional, vindictive, unstable. The usual words powerful men reach for when a woman stops being useful and starts being right. But paper is calmer than pride, and the paper told the truth. His loans had been in default. Vendors had waited months. Employees had been asked to stay loyal while their benefits were delayed and their hours cut. Contractors had fixed leaking roofs and broken kitchens, then sat by their mailboxes waiting for checks that never came, so we paid the small people first. Not Robert, not Jason, not anyone with the last name Brooks who thought reputation was a bank account. The housekeepers, the maintenance crews, the local suppliers, the retired electrician who had sent 3 polite invoices before finally filing a claim. I remember signing his payment approval and feeling my throat ache. My father had stepped over people like him for years. I would not build my peace on their backs. Jason lost his title within 6 weeks. He called me cruel. Sarah called it accountability. He had no operating experience, no clean reports, no measurable reason to stay except being Robert's son for the first time in his life. That was not enough. Mom changed more slowly. Her first voicemails were exactly what I expected. Crying, begging, asking me not to humiliate my father, asking me to be kind. But then, one night, she left a message that sounded different. "I keep thinking about your wedding," she said, her voice small. "I should have stood up for you." I listened to that message twice. Then I saved it. I did not call back right away. Healing is not the same as opening the door. By spring, the first old Brooks property reopened as a retreat. The lobby smelled like warm cedar, clean linen, and orange peel. We replaced the dark carpets with pale wood floors. We took down the heavy gold mirrors Robert loved and hung photographs of forests, water, and open sky near the front windows. We placed 2 soft chairs beside a small table with fresh white roses. I stood there before the first guests arrived, watching morning light move across the floor. Ryan slipped his hand into mine. "You did it," he said. I looked at those chairs by the window and thought of the empty one at my wedding. For years, that chair had been proof that I was unwanted. Now an empty chair meant something else: space, choice, room for someone who actually deserved to sit beside me. I did not get my father back, but I got myself back. And for the first time, that felt like more than enough. For a long time, I thought the empty chair at my wedding was the end of my story. It wasn't. It was the beginning of the day I finally stopped begging the wrong people to love me the right way. My father came back when my name was worth $580 million. He called it family. I called it what it was: need. Real love does not wait until you become useful. Real family does not turn your success into an emergency fund. And justice does not always have to scream. Sometimes it walks into dinner at 7, sets the truth on the table, and leaves without asking permission. If you have ever had to protect yourself from someone who called it family, share your story in the comments and hit subscribe so you do not miss the next story.